This past weekend, I put up a video which was less than a minute long, titled Surat al-Nas bikhat al-Musnad. And as the title implies, the video is simply presents the Arabic text of the last chapter of the Qur'an in the Musnad script, also known as the South Arabian or Himyari script. Now, some might have wondered, the few people who saw that might have wondered what the point was of that sort of exercise. For example, was the video perhaps just playing some sort of silly game? The reality, however, is that the Qur'an being written in what is now the standard Arabic script can be thought of as a human decision drawn from among multiple possible choices. It's sort of a product of history, but it wasn't the only possible outcome. And as I hope becomes clear when we get to the Abu Layth clip, which I want to show at the end of this video, I don't mean that in any sort of polemical way. I'm simply saying that there's nothing implausible about a scenario or an alternate history, if you will, in which the earliest writers of the Qur'an chose instead the Himyari or Musnad script, which is to say the South Arabian script. Had they done so, that script might have changed history regarding, what script would become the dominant standard Arabic script. And by the way, to show that this isn't intended in any sort of polemical way, as I'm a Christian, consider an analogy with the Hebrew Bible. We know that in antiquity, some biblical texts were written in the Phoenician or quote-unquote Paleo-Hebrew script. Personally, I do not believe we have good evidence to think that the entire Tanakh, the entire Hebrew Bible as we understand it, was written in that script. But even if some portions were never written in that script during antiquity, it still therefore becomes interesting that certain modern minds have sought to recast those biblical texts into the Phoenician script. But beyond that, the Hebrew Bible is now typically written, and this has been the case for 2 millennia, just about, it's now typically written in the Ashuri or Assyrian script, also known as the block script or the square script, which has itself come to be recognized as the standard Hebrew script. And beyond that, while it did not catch on, it wasn't popular, it's nonetheless the case that there were medieval Karaites who wrote parts of the Hebrew Bible in the Arabic script. Now, I share all that in the hopes that it helps to make clear that I do not intend these points polemically. What I'm saying about the Qur'an, I'm not a believer in the Qur'an, but I am a believer in the Bible, and so what I'm saying about the Quranic text could also be said about the biblical text. That's all. That was the only reason I went on that segue. It's to say that it's simply a fact that for any of these texts, including biblical texts, if a few things in history were changed, a different script could have become dominant, and the relevant text could have been conveyed through that particular script. Now, with that in mind, it's worth noting that Mufti Abu Layth, who is himself a Muslim, touched on this possibility for the Qur'an in a video he put out 8 months ago, which I'll share a link to in the video description. Now, his video is itself about 35 minutes long, but I'll only be playing about 5 minutes from that video here. However, for those who are interested in seeing more, I would recommend watching the last 15 minutes of his video, as he shares this very nuanced view of the Qur'an being simultaneously, both revelation and, in a sense, still reflecting human decisions in its current form. For example, he proposes that the Qur'an in essence had meaning, but the precise wording reflected the choices of those humans whom it was transmitted through, and who were free to use different synonyms so long as their word choices remained faithful to the meaning. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm for non-Muslims who might be concerned, I'm not claiming that the Qur'an is revelation. I'm simply noting an interesting, nuanced view taken by a knowledgeable Muslim. But for this video, I wanted to share a 5-minute portion from one of Abu Layth's videos, which might be thought of as simply more historical in orientation, which is to say that people with different views of the Qur'an could agree with what is said here, right? Irrespective of whether you think it's revelation, one can agree with Abu Layth, what he's saying here. Now, in this clip, Abu Layth gets into the transition from an almost purely oral Qur'an to a fully written Qur'an. And he alludes to how the choice of the precise script which was employed was essentially a human decision. And he also alludes to how a different choice of script was, at least in theory, a possibility. Although he only mentions it briefly, he nonetheless explicitly touches on the Himyari or Musnad script, again, also known as the South Arabian script, and thereby he was hinting that before the Qur'an was put into writing, that was at least a possible available choice for conveying it. And I'll highlight the portions where he alludes to that. So in short, I share this only in the hopes of showing that the idea of Qur'anic Arabic being conveyed in the Himyari or Musnad script is neither silly nor absurd, nor am I the only one who's considered this possibility. So with that, this video will simply end when the clip ends. It's a 5-minute clip. And as always, I look forward to the comments of others. God bless. Here's the clip.
Then there is the embodiment stage. Now, I've used the term embodiment because it's being now placed in a written body. Okay, it moves from an oral to a textual tradition. I have a mind trap elaborating on this with Dr. Khalil Andani. Is definitely worth checking out, where we speak about this, the challenges of something going from an oral to a written phase. Now this, and the verse of the Qur'an, أنزلنا الكتاب تجعلونه قراطيس, we revealed the book. We say the book, we revealed the scripture, you make it into pages. And that is a verse of the Qur'an. Although there are some examples of this from the Prophet's life, where people are trying to write it down on whether it's going to be parchments and things, but really it happens after the Prophet's life. It happens during arguably Abu Bakr's time, definitely by Uthman's time. But this whole thing, even before the Uthmani thing, this writing it down has many challenges with it. What some of these challenges are, just in case you're wondering, well, first of all, it was to do with what script should be used. Okay, because that's an important point. What script? So the Nabatean script was chosen. Now this was something which at the time was called al-Jazm, they would call it, as opposed to the Himyari Musnad script that was being chosen, that the Arabians used to write with. So this was a more northern kingdom script. It was used in modern day Iraq. It was from the Nabateans, inherited by the other cultures that came after them, especially in Hira. We know Abu Sufyan, he imports this script through Bishr ibn Abdul Malik. This is why Muawiyah radiallahu anh was one of the first people to write the script, and this is why the Prophet said to the captives in the Battle of Badr that if they teach the Yathrib people, the Medinan people, how to write, a number of people, they can buy their freedom with it, because this script was imported into Mecca from Hira. So the Prophet making this decision to let's use this script in and of itself would not have been a sacred script. It was the decision that the Prophet ﷺ adopted, as which one could then posit is part of the divine plan. But this script was a very worldly script. It was imported into Mecca and then into Medina, and it naturally had its challenges. So there's all of that which you have to look at. So things like that as well. So just to be clear, there was, let me just see if I missed any notes right there. And this would have been the end of the pure oral expression era. Then there was the fifth stage, the constriction or reductionist stage. I mean, it's a reductionist stage, but I've called it constriction. And that is the Rasm al-Uthmani. In his time, Uthman radiallahu anh definitely puts together this codex, this consonantal restriction, where he has certain, you can't really, he's trying to create some unity amongst people wishing to recite. Now, what the challenges that brings, it traps the expression within these consonantal barriers of that script, which is that from Hira, the Jazm script, the Nabatean script, and it is the end of the dynamic era. Because now, once the words are trapped, people can no longer substitute them. Okay, so that has definitely come to an end. I will just, and you move on to the deciphering stage, which is after that, where several Qurra emerge, because now, although the consonantal template is there, how to read it, but the vowels, people are still, some people may be doing their own ijtihad, some people may be assuming, so there is a lot of attempts in how should it be best pronounced. What are the inflections, the endings? How should they be? What are the vowelings, the diacritical marks? Is this a fa or a qaf? It's